When it comes to trying to understand the paranormal and the supernatural, I mean, there are obviously kind of two possibilities, given that people all around the world, for as long as records have begun, have had weird experiences that they've interpreted in paranormal or supernatural terms. Either those things genuinely are paranormal in the sense that they're beyond explanation in terms of currently accepted conventional science, or if in fact they're not paranormal in that sense, there's some kind of psychological phenomenon, then by trying to understand the psychology behind it, we can kind of understand more generally about how the mind works and how sometimes our own mind can play tricks on us. I'm Professor Chris French. Up until last October, I worked at Goldsmiths in the psychology department there. And I headed the anomalistic psychology research unit. And anomalistic psychology is essentially the psychology of weird stuff. That ranges from everything from kind of alien abduction claims to people who think they've seen a ghost, people who claim to have psychic powers. If it's weird, we're interested in it. And there's lots of reasons why people find the supernatural and the paranormal fascinating. I mean, one thing is, it is fascinating. It's interesting. It's fun. It's the subject of so much fiction and drama and so on. And for many people, I think they feel, well, if these things were true, makes the universe a more interesting place. So that's a kind of very basic reason. But also when it comes to certain kinds of belief, and in particular beliefs about life after death, then there's a very strong emotional, motivational component there as well. I mean, none of us like the idea that when we die, that's it, that's the end of us. And maybe even less the idea that when our loved ones die, that's it, we'll never have contact with them again. And so we're drawn to any kind of evidence, even if it might be something that's kind of in one sense frightening, like ghosts. I mean, they're kind of attraction of ghosts is that they do imply life after death. When people report ghostly encounters, one thing it's important to say, I think, is that summons up an image. When you use language like that, people do think in terms of a kind of full form apparition coming through the wall or something like this. Whereas in fact, most of the time when people report ghostly encounters, it's not quite that dramatic. It's going to be things like.
I can't remember how old I was. I think I was maybe like 13 or 12. It was quite a while ago. And I was looking for my dad. I can't remember why. And my mum has like a studio / garage in the garden because she's an artist. And our like kitchen back door is glass. So I was looking for my dad and I went in there and then I saw him walking across the garden towards the studio. So I opened the door and I was like, Dad. And then he didn't turn around and I kept being like, Dad. And I was actually getting kind of annoyed. I was saying his name and he was not responding, so I just kept following him into the studio. And then if you go into the studio, you can go through the studio into a garage. And I saw him because that's got glass windows as well, windows. And he walks in and then into the garage, like through the studio. So I followed him in there, still calling his name, but I was like 7 foot behind him or something. And then when I got in there, he wasn't there. Like I went into the garage, I looked in his office and there's like no, if he'd walked in and come straight out the other door, he would have had to unlock it. Like it would have taken him more than the like 4 seconds that it took me to get in there. So I was really weirded out. And then I went inside to my mum and I was like, where's Dad? I just followed him into the studio and now he's not there. And then my mum was like, Dad's in the shower. So then I went to the bathroom and I could hear the shower running and I was like, outside the door, like, Dad. And then he was like, yeah. I was like, were you just in the studio? He was like, no. So I just like I thought I followed him. Yeah, and then so with that, I still live at home, and that studio is still there, and I hate being in it. Like since then, I don't know. It's like I lived in it for a while, but I didn't like being in there alone.
Other times, people, again, it's very common experience, obviously, as I'm sure you'll know, that people see faces in clouds, in rocks, in stains on the floor and so on. Now, sometimes you might think you've seen something there in the dark shadows that just wasn't there at all. Again, your imagination plays tricks on you. I mean, hallucinations are much more common amongst the normal, healthy, non-clinical population than people generally appreciate.
I think I was probably about 13 when we first did it. Oh no, sorry, that's a lie. Not first did it, only time we ever did it. After that, I wouldn't do it again, that's for sure. But I was amongst a group of friends of ours who'd spoken about it for a long time.
Ouija boards basically started out as a kind of game. It was, I can't remember which games company it was now, but one of the names you'd recognise actually kind of copyrighted it, and it was just basically a form of entertainment. There was no kind of implication that it was anything to do with spirits and so on, but people very quickly latched onto the idea that spirits were involved.
And then on the table, we actually did I think it was the alphabet, I think it was numbers, and it was yes and no. And I think it was only scraps of paper that we used. So we didn't actually make anything. It was just a scrap of paper with ABC written on it, set around a table. And then my friend Nick, whose house it was, he went and got a glass. It was only a small tumbler glass. And I don't even know where we even got the idea from, but I imagined we've read about it, heard about it, whatever. So we put the glass down amongst all of us. I can't remember exactly how many there were. How many there were of us. But and then we started, and everyone put their finger on the glass, as you do. Yeah. Call the spirits, as you're supposed to do, and then you sort of go from there. And strange enough, it just started. The glass started moving, but obviously you're with your mates, so you assume straight away that someone else doing it. And then it started reading out. It was asking questions, and it would spell out. So it'd move around the table, spelling out words, and it'd go from yes to no. And eventually the glass was travelling so fast that you couldn't keep your finger on it. It was just, it doesn't sound real today. It doesn't sound real then, but it happened. It's just, you had to be there. I mean, at the time, we was, as young kids, I remember when it eventually finished, one of my friends jumped up, he ran out and ran away home with his mum.
And I certainly, talk to any kind of Christian, anybody who's involved in the Christian religion in a big way, they would say, don't ever use it. You're opening the door to dark powers and so on. Now, I don't actually personally think that's true.
Yes, and we went and saw a priest. I think there was three of us when I saw one, and I wouldn't say he didn't laugh it off, and we took it quite seriously because he could see the way in which we were kind of disturbed by it all. And he just put across that it's something that we shouldn't mess around with because it's something that it's basically the devil playing with you. That's what he said. So it's bad spirits, sort of very much encouraging you to do things and telling you to do whatever it is. And we were at the time, I say, very, very worried about it all. I'm not going to lie. It's just one of those things you just don't believe. You don't believe, and that's because you're so inquisitive, and that is why at a young age you try it and do it. And of course, when it happens, what you don't expect it to happen, because your only reason you're doing it is to prove everyone it's rubbish, isn't it? But then you can't believe, if you're a God-fearing person and you believe in God, which is good, you've got to obviously believe in the bad side of things, to weigh up the two. There's got to be one and the other, isn't there? There can't just be one. And it's bad and good and evil, as Jamal would say.
And I think sometimes maybe your brain is just showing you what you want to see in a way. I don't know for what reason that could be, but if you say what does my gut feel about it, if I still I'm 21 now, I still get a weird feeling in my tummy when I go into the studio, that nervousy, anxious feeling that's just I still get that, and I always feel like when I'm in there I'm not alone, even though that doesn't really make sense to if I do believe in ghosts, because I wouldn't believe that there's a ghost that just lives in the studio, but that is just how I feel.
If you want to choose to believe in something because it makes you feel happy, well, fine, as long as it's not doing anybody else any harm. I've not got a problem with that. But from a scientific point of view, I'm more interested in trying to figure out how things really are.